Start Over Strong, Life After a DUI, a podcast for people, not offenders. Brought to you by Smart Start, the nation's most trusted, judgment-free ignition interlock provider. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Stigma Free IID. I am your co-host, Morgan Ryan.
And I'm Izzy Varela.
We do have a guest with us today. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Steve Luce.
Thank you very much.
We have a very exciting episode today. We're going to talk all about the U.S. Farm Bill, THC laws, and the 0.03% rule and what that means. I feel like marijuana laws have changed overnight. There's a lot of confusion out there. And so I think people don't understand. It's like one state it's restricted, the other state it's illegal, the other state it's okay. And apparently you can still buy or you can go buy weed gummies at the gas station. So Steve and Izzy, my goal today is to understand what has happened so we can all get on the same page here and then really talk about that 0.3% THC rule and what and why people continue to hear about this right now. I know this is really maybe not traumatic, but it's causing some trauma in the state of Texas for sure. And so, Steve, please introduce yourself, give us your background, and welcome back to the show as always. I know our audience loves to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm Steve Luce. I'm a retired Washington State trooper for 25 years. I work in the impaired driving section for the last 10 years of my career. After that, I came to work for Smart Start. I'm currently the Vice President of Field Sales.
That's fantastic. And Izzy, would you give us a little bit background on Smart Start, who we are, what we do? And then I'd also like for you to explain your personal position on marijuana today.
Sure. So Smart Start is the leader in the IID space. Due to our support model, we lead with empathy, pricing with empathy, and really we are the first step forward to help you go through your DWI journey. We know that DWIs impact people of all backgrounds, professional backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses. It impacts everyone, right? And it impacts you in a different way. Our company and our team, our program managers are trained to really help you get through that experience and get back to unrestricted driving. So my position on marijuana is pretty simple. I am not anti-marijuana. I'm for responsible use. I think there's things that have come from it that have caused problems that were unintended. But I think as far as the use of it, if it's a personal choice and you're using responsibly and if you're the right age, then I'm for it, right? I think that's what I'm going to tell my kids is like, hey, you're not using it until you're the appropriate age and your brain's formed and you're making wise decisions. But I think what we're really seeing right now is kind of an epidemic of misuse. And as our company is anti-substance and anti-driving, that does include marijuana in my perspective.
Steve, your position on marijuana today.
You're coming from former law enforcement. I've always seen it as a gateway drug. And coming 25 years when I started back in 1989, it was I always looked at it as a gateway drug. And so the people I dealt with were moving on to different things and higher different drugs, cocaine and heroin and those kind of things. So that's the way I looked at it. I also see a city where I came from, and this is my personal view, where, they opened it up to drugs and illicit drugs were made, as long as you had less than 3 ounces, you could have it. And you saw the homeless population grow and you could go into that. But we also saw a fatality rate that went from one of the lowest in the country as far as impaired driving fatalities to one of the highest in the country after legalizing marijuana. And so, I think if you're going to use it in your home space, like you referred to, Izzy, that's fine. But I do think there's an epidemic across the country. I think there's a void in education as to driving and marijuana. I think there's a lot of things to be learned.
Yeah. And my personal opinion, I mean, Izzy, you and I have done, and we're in the middle of a series right now specific to weed gummies and marijuana. We have got to stop treating marijuana as a substance that is illegal. In some states, yes, it is illegal, but in many states, it is not illegal. So when we think about alcohol and we think about marijuana, I understand they do different things. Some were using recreationally, others were using medicinally. There's a purpose and an intent behind this use and many different use cases, but we have got to start treating and respecting that individuals who reside in a state where marijuana is legal. We have to understand how to support them, especially as an ignition interlock device company. Poly blows, we've talked all about this before. We're going to talk more about this in a weed gummy series. But today I want to jump right in and I want to start from the beginning. My personal perspective is that, as my ex-partner was in the military, I do believe we could have benefited more from weed gummies. We've talked about the barriers changing. Right now you can just go, Izzy, if I believe you can just go to the gas station and pick out a can of
Or
marijuana.
the liquor store. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's just very, very accessible. I mean, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, Steve, we used to have to, buy it in a bag from a dude in a black jacket and roll it up and touch it and grind it. And it was a very physical process. Now you can just take it off the shelf. How do you feel about that, Steve?
It's different. I'm the older generation. You guys are younger than me, so I grew up in a different generation, and so it is different for me because I did spend most of my career, even when I retired, almost was all enforcing marijuana laws and arresting people for that, and
Yeah.
and arresting the dealers and pulling over the cars that had 40 pounds of marijuana in them, and things like that, and
40
arresting those
pounds of
people.
marijuana.
So
Mm.
it is an adjustment, and for me personally, I do need to adjust to that because people around me are using it, people that I know, and people that are friends, and so it's been an adjustment for me to work through that. Uh, it From my generation, I think it's a little different. So
We
that's all I have to
we
say.
appreciate the
So
honesty that you
yeah,
have 3 different
yeah.
perspectives, right? We're bringing 3 different perspectives. And Izzy and we're pretty much on the same page, but Steve, we respect that. We love your honesty. We've broken down in other episodes the differences between Delta and THC and hemp and things of that nature. And so please go watch those episodes. But today, in terms of use, right, we have moms who are shifting away from wine culture, moving into and I'm still personally I'm trying to figure out how I feel about this. One of the things I love about marijuana specifically is that while unfortunately, yes, in many cases it is a gateway drug, I think that is something that statistically I wish we had more information on. As this continues to grow and blossom over time, I hope that changes. But using marijuana for all of the addicts, I have a huge sobriety community that follow me on Instagram that I talk with every day. I get DMs and I love our addict community, especially with my personal story. I've never been an addict myself. My ex-partner is, but using marijuana as a form to get off of alcohol specifically and then into a place of true sobriety with no substance use. So let's start at the beginning. I want to talk about the Farm Bill. Steve, within this 2018 Farm Bill, can you talk to me about what happened and the inception of this?
Well, it basically legalized hemp, which is a form of THC, and as it says, the 3% and Delta 9. And so we are able to make gummies, and like we talked about, the THC drinks, and vapes and all those kind of things where it's not the typical joint. I mean, I was in Baltimore 3 weeks ago and I saw the largest joint in the bus stop that I've ever seen in my life. I mean, this
Like
thing was.
someone,
Oh,
you
she was
did this
sitting
with your
there.
hands.
Oh
I was like,
yeah. Well, she was
envisioning.
sitting there holding it and was like, "Holy mackerel, is that actually a marijuana joint?" And it was like, "Yes." So it was huge. I was like, and she's just sitting in the bus stop and they were
Yeah.
sharing it. So, this whole concept has changed and now you can go in the workplace. You can be high on THC, nobody knows. You can take a gummy, you can vape on it, things like that. So it does change the whole atmosphere of what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
because you
So
can't smell
you
it if
can't
you've taken
smell
a
it, you can't
gummy.
see it. And
Mhm.
so, and then and you talked about Texas law that makes it kind of legal. And so people, even though it's sub quantities, what do people do? You take more. And so, well, okay, well, it's only this, less than 3% in one gummy. I'll take 6 gummies and I'll get a better effect. So that's
Texas,
human nature, right? So
like literally, Texas is literally in the middle of an identity
It's
crisis.
very confusing right now. Yeah, I mean, and
No,
they're
none
still
of
trying
us
to
even know
change.
what's going
yeah,
on. We're
no,
the
no.
experts, and none of us know what's going on.
And it's an evolving thing because there are politicians that are still trying to change or retract the law. They're trying to change the forms that it's available in because for good reason. I mean, they don't want to make it attractive to children. The way that a lot of it is packaged right now is very attractive to children,
Yeah.
but it's evolving. Like by the time this episode airs, there might be something that's going on legally in the state of Texas that changes. And we're coming up on an election cycle as well.
I know. How do you feel about that, Izzy, knowing that your boys can just
Yeah.
walk in and see something like that at a gas
To
station today?
Steve's point, I think the biggest gap is education. I think some parents don't want to talk about it with kids. We kind of hear the horror stories of where they're handing out things that look innocuous and are dangerous to children. But it's something where I'm having to have the conversations with my children a lot earlier in life than I would have liked to. And that is because when it's presented to them, it won't be from me, it'll be a commercial presentation or potentially someone giving a commercial product to them because their parents have it, right? So I think that's has forced a conversation with my kids a lot earlier about drugs. I don't think there's any age that's too early to have it. And, I think you really have to have it as an evolving thing. It is not a one-time conversation. It is an every so often conversation, maybe even weekly, to remind them of the dangers of drugs. Because I think as we look at things, the kind of the sinister nature of marijuana has gone away, but that doesn't mean for them it's not a bad thing. We've kind of referenced studies before where at their age, it does affect their brain, the development of their brain. And I don't want them restricting their potential by trying something too early, right?
Yeah, and availability should not be misconstrued with safety.
Correct.
And it's not just that it's available, it's you use the term commercially.
Commercially and
Marketed.
packaged in a way
It's
that's
pretty.
attractive to them. Yeah.
It's pretty. Like,
So
I want it, they want it. That's true, and that doesn't mean it's safe.
yeah, and that's the fearful thing for me as a parent, right? Is I think for us at the age where we were, where it was a very sinister thing, and it was presented in a really bad way, and we kind of came to understand, well, if used responsibly, it's not that bad. It may even have a benefit for some people. Now it's a product that's alongside,
Yeah.
very safe things, and that's the danger to me for
Yeah.
them. For them.
Well, it's true. And it's like we're so confused, and this has contributed to public confusion, Steve. Izzy and I break down in an episode, for example, with weed gummies, like, can it come up positive on a drug test? So go watch that episode because, right, there are rules and laws about the mass per gummy and how much you can put into a gummy. And then there's like the 0.03% THC rule, which is specifically the rule I'm talking about. Steve, can you help me and the audience understand what this rule is? Because I think a lot of assumptions are being made.
Again, this is a new territory for me too. And so when marijuana first came legal, Washington was the second state. And back when we were talking about it, we had discussions with the state legislature, what's our impairment level? And then it was in nanograms. And so if you reach this amount of nanograms, you're legally impaired, because they wanted to everybody wants to pull it back to the alcohol impairment. So 0.08, everybody knows that's the impairment level, and they want to give a standard for nanograms for that. So on the 0.03, again, that's a percentage that I think the government said it came out and said, okay, at this level, it's okay to commercialize it, right? We're not going to make it more than that because that's bad in terms. That's going to make it bad, right? We can't do that. And so I think, in simple terms, in my simple mind, that's kind of how I reflect on it. And again, I'm not the expert when it comes to the 0.03%.
Yeah.
So.
Well, true or false, though, if someone hears it's under 0.03% THC, they're going to think that's not going to get them high. True or false?
I think majority of the thing it's a safe thing.
Right. Well, and it doesn't mean that it's still not psychoactive.
Correct.
Right.
It's still psychoactive. That's what THC is. Again, we do break down the differences between hemp, what is psychoactive, what is not psychoactive, like CBD, CBG, all of those items in another episode, and we'll link that at the close of this one. Steve, let's talk as well about the Delta TH9 law, that concentration, and maybe what that law did and does.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing that Delta 8, so gummies, right? So it's below that level. And carrying back to again, I just want to comment one thing. When Izzy talked about his kids, is one of the things we're seeing out there now when you combine that is electric bikes and scooters, all those things where they're impaired, right? And they're taking those and they're driving them, and it causes serious injury.
And they go at a very heavy rate of speed too. Those electric bikes, they go 25, 35 miles an hour, right?
Yes. And another thing that human nature is, think about when you take an ibuprofen. The bottle says 2. Well, I got a really bad headache, I'm going to take 6, right? And that's, the same thing with gummies. And you look at that, it's like, it says I'm only supposed to take 1. Well,
Right.
You know what? That's not going to work for me. I have a tolerance. I'm going to take 8 or whatever it may be.
Right.
So
and 1 might become 2 over time, might become 3, might
and your
become 4
addiction
because
just
you
comes
need
on.
it.
So So I mean, I think the government tried to say, hey, how do we make this safe, and how do we make this bill look like it's compliant for everyone? And that's where you come in with the Delta 9 and the different levels of that. Again, I'm not the super expert on Delta 9, but that's kind of thing.
You can also chat GPT. I
Yeah.
mean, I call Chad everybody knows I talk about Chad regularly with my wife, like it's a regular person. You can ask Chad at any point
Yeah.
in time the differences between these things, especially if you're a parent
Yeah.
and you're watching your child or have learned that they're consuming something or you want to consume it yourself and you don't understand the laws. There is a lot of public confusion, though, around this. And I think the general rule of thumb here is that we cannot confuse something being legal with it meaning non-impairment. Those two things are not the same thing. It can still impair you. So cannabis laws in general, Izzy, talk to me about maybe how this can differ state over state. This is where I personally have the biggest question mark.
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
So many ways. I think just like anything major, the states are being uh, allowed to be responsible for the legislation that they pass, the legality of everything, right? So anything can differ by state, by product type. THC concentration also is a factor, recreational versus medical. So there's just a lot of different factors that each state is coming up with, and your laws changes as you cross the border. We went to Oklahoma a few weeks ago, and as soon as you cross into Oklahoma, there's dispensaries there, right? And that it's just different by state, and I think you have to really be educated in what you're doing in your own state, more importantly. But as you travel, you have to understand those too. And the types of marijuana that are available, the concentrations, the product types, all that's going to change by state.
Yeah. Do you think, Steve, that law enforcement is going to be more lax on, for example, in that instance, if they obtain weed gummies or something because it's legal in Oklahoma? It's no different than picking up a 6-pack. I'm just using this scenario and equation lightly because it's not 1-to-1 ratio. I'm just explaining a situation where maybe they decide to get gummies. They come over the border into Texas and now they're in our home state and they have maybe 2 left in the pack. They forget it. An officer pulls them over. In that circumstance, it's still illegal in the state of Texas. So what is the officer and what do you think they're prone to do?
Again, it's officer discretion, and so it's up to the officer. I can only speak to how I would
Okay.
approach that. Let's say in the past, I pulled over numerous people that have bongs and pipes and all those kind of things, and what I would do is have them dispose of them. And so uh, I, I can remember the sad face today when a person
You
had
were a cool cop.
yeah,
Steve was a cool guy. I'm not
yeah.
surprised by this because, like, he's everybody's favorite at work.
Yeah, he had a 3-foot bong behind his truck, and it was 3-foot glass, and he had a towel. So I said, "Hey, you know what? I could charge you with that, or you can put it in the towel in the parking lot. You can smash it right here in front of me." And so, sadly, with tears, he smashed his 3-foot bong in the parking lot. If it's enough to do, I think any officer uses that. Okay, they're going to give you, I think you'll get a lot of warnings with something like you just described. But, if it's obtained illegally, I think I want to step back just a little bit. That impairment is impairment. It doesn't matter where it comes from, right? When it comes to impairment and what you're doing, I don't care where you got impaired from. I don't care if it's prescription drugs, gummies. I don't care. If you're impaired, I'm going to take action on that. And I'll say maybe I was a cool cop, but I wasn't a nice trooper when it came to impairment
Right.
because I dealt with the
Yeah.
families, the death, the injuries, what you saw. And so impairment is impairment. If you pulled over and you're impaired, I'm going to take action.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the next time it may not be you stopping him, it might be causing an accident
Right.
that stops him, right? So I think that's our biggest thing is we kind of go back to that. Is the impairment's the important portion to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Making the decision to be impaired and getting behind the wheel is what's important to us, and that's all something we all agree on. But funny you're talking about like the different state stuff. In some cities now they have amnesty boxes. So if you go to Vegas to the airport and you buy stuff there, they have an
This-
amnesty
okay.
box where you can
What
drop
What
it
does
in
this
there.
mean?
and after-
Define that for me.
I think a lot of people they think they can buy and travel. I think that's being not allowed as much,
Mhm.
right? So to your point, a lot of people would go to when it was legal first in California and Colorado and Washington, it was a thing for people to travel and put it in their suitcase and come back. And I think now your destinations are kind of restricting that because they don't want that to happen as much. So they have amnesty boxes in some airports where you can dump whatever's left, your 2 gummies, your 3 gummies, your vape, and kind of you're not in trouble for it if you get rid of it there.
I think the important thing there too is when you fly, it's a federal law,
That's
right?
right.
And so you're not breaking a state law, you're breaking a federal law at that point.
What's the difference, Steve? Tell me what the difference between a federal law and a state law is.
The state law is basically state legislation. It's a law within your state, right? And I wouldn't say it's less serious, but a federal law basically governs the whole country. And so it doesn't matter where you're at, they're going to take action on it. And you're going to federal court, which is a bigger deal. I mean, that's I would say FBI, right? That's federal. The enforcement is a little bit different level.
Yep.
The penalties are a little bit different.
Sure.
And just remember, if you're going to foreign countries, we've all seen it where celebrities are, they've ended up in jail for very small
Yeah.
amounts.
Right.
Not These aren't large amounts they're talking about. This
Yeah.
is a joint. This is a half a joint. This is gummies.
Yeah.
So you got to be a little careful when you travel and where you're traveling. Now, it is different when you're traveling from state to state, as we discussed in your car, and you're driving
Mhm.
across the borders.
Right.
That's a little bit different, but I would use the amnesty box if you're getting on an airplane.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
would be,
The whoopsie
you don't want
box.
to take that
Whoops.
risk, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to have an air marshal take them off the plane. So,
No, I mean, and
yeah.
generally speaking, too, if you're using it, you're likely a little bit more forgetful, right? There are
Hmm.
side effects to using a substance that may make you more prone to walk in to your flight with it on you, especially if you have, well, and in terms of medical status, right? Because medical status is a big part of this conversation. If
Yeah.
I have a medical card that allows me to smoke it, chew it, swallow it, whatever, then isn't it true that I can bring it with me on the airplane because I have a card that says I can do so?
Well, it depends on if that medical card is valid in the next state you're going to,
Yeah.
right? Where you land, or
Okay.
is it honored by the federal government, which most times it's not going to be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think one of the funniest things is, they would show their back before it was even legal. They said, "I have my medical card." But, well, your medical card allows you to have a certain amount, right? A very small amount,
Mhm.
and they would have a baggie. They pull it out, and there's a gallon Ziploc bag, and well, that's not medical marijuana. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
So I
as
mean,
long as
but
it's
it was a alternative to try and get out of to get this, and so when you look at the law for medical marijuana, it's very distinct on what they can have, how much they can hold, where it came from, where it was produced. It's not from the guy in the corner, right?
yeah,
You have to go and it's like a prescription, and
right.
that's how it was meant to be initially,
And as
and
long as you're within those parameters, then it's accurate. But it's funny, it reminds me of
yeah.
people with their ESAs, their emotional service animals, and their iguanas and things that they're taking. And I mean, to each their own, right? Like you need what you need, and I'm pro that as long as you're not driving impaired and you're not breaking the law. I think in many instances, Americans, their heart posture is the right posture. They're not intentionally
Right.
flying on a plane to break a law.
Right.
And that, I mean, that's my position. I believe the good in people. I think to consumers are relying on things like social media and chat and things of that nature. It's just at the end of the day, know
Right.
the law and understand the law before you go state a receipt or you get on a plane to do XYZ. Microdosing. Okay. This is a big one. Microdosing, functional THC. That just makes me laugh. The
Mhm.
term functional THC, because it reminds me of like functional movements. We talk a lot about daily deliverance for those in the addiction community. And then cutting it in half yourself advertising. This drives me bananas. Izzy and I did a whole episode on this where we actually have people on social media showing a woman with a knife cutting a gummy. When, look, if I wasn't in the factory myself and I didn't see somebody make that, how do you understand the mass of that gummy and where the THC is even compromised? Like, what if I cut it in half and I give half of it to you, Steve, and you get all the THC and I get nothing? And then there goes Steve, right?
Yeah.
See you later, alligator. So let's talk about microdosing. Izzy, I know you're opinionated on this too. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's more and more heavily marketed to kind of the health and wellness community. So, stress management, productivity, sometimes in some situations. It's kind of that conversation of like the functional mushrooms and the THC, and those are getting blended a lot together now as a alternative to alcohol. I've seen there's a couple brands that represent themselves as like, here, functional mushrooms, CBD, THC. This will help you get off of alcohol, right? And I think that's one thing that we're seeing a lot about. Stress management's a major thing. I think, as Americans, as we're just burnt out, so we're looking for any kind of a form of stress management now. And what used to be acceptable as pouring a glass of wine or having a few beers, people don't want to do that anymore because
No.
the results on your body, your mind, all that. We're understanding that the trade-off's not there, so we're looking for something else, right? So I don't want to consume alcohol at the level that my parents did, or I don't want to consume alcohol anymore at all. Let's look at THC and CBD and functional mushrooms as an option. Productivity is interesting. I think I don't know a lot of times where I've consumed THC and felt more productive, but I guess for some people it might work.
Right. It's like take it for anxiety and it's like
Yeah,
proven to make you more
exactly.
anxious. Okay. Someone
So
make this make sense.
there's a lot of different kind of a marketing spin around it. I think just like anything, people are trying to find their niche in the market. People are trying to sell products, and sometimes they'll position a product as, self-help,
Mm.
wellness, a replacement for something else that's bad for you, and I think that we're pushing the limits on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, peptides is a big one, right?
That's peptides now,
I
yeah.
mean, gosh, my personal trainer, that I have, he trains several famous football players. I trust him. I mean, I trust this guy. And he is like, don't you dare put a peptide in your body. And I'm like, really? And then there's other people that are for it. And what's happened, I think, post COVID, whether we like it or not, is the rules and the boundaries have really been blurred between the medical community, who we trust as experts, and who we don't. And now we have all these products, including marijuana and marijuana gummies, that can or cannot maybe help us do and achieve whatever we want. I'm very much against using substances to cope, right? Go solve the problem, rip the poison out root and stem before we start putting stuff into our body. But if we want to accomplish something, right, like my pre-workout, my black coffee, right? That's what I take for my pre-workout. It's going to help me get there, right? With vitamins and supplements. I don't know. Steve, what are your thoughts on marijuana gummies, and these being used and marketed from a wellness perspective?
It's just again, I look at it differently, right? And I look at it as addiction. And Izzy talked about replacing the alcohol, but to me, they're just moving to another substance. And you brought up the fact that, hey, let's deal with what's causing that, right? I'm an addict. I love Fritos, right? I love chips, and it makes me a large person. And I like hamburgers, but those are addictive things, right? I like to eat those things, and I know they're going to make me fat if I don't work out, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, everything is addictive when it comes to that. And I think we're just moving from the source to something that's you can hide behind a little bit,
Mhm.
right? You can hide behind it. It's not out there. You're not, oh, well, that's okay. I don't partake in alcohol, where everybody sees that. And there's a persona behind that.
Yeah.
There's a stereotype behind that. And you can sit at home and take your gummies or in your car or at work and nobody knows. And you can
Yeah.
kind of hide behind that. And
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily good for society overall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've had a personal experience recently with a really good friend of mine who was a former drug addict, did drink, things like that, doesn't have any DUIs on record, but medically, from a physician perspective, was asked to get on Suboxone. That's the famous drug that we all hear about. It's an opiate blocker, and it prevents your brain from wanting that substance. And after so many years, the goal is to get off of Suboxone, right? And it is just terrible, right, for your body, but it's great for you in other ways. And this person has been in recovery, so to speak, but he's on Suboxone. And so, him and his physician, he does live in a state where marijuana is legal. They've talked about moving him onto marijuana and in a gummy form, so less physical form, like a powder, for example, and allowing him to move off of Suboxone into marijuana. But then the goal would be, right, to move away from marijuana at some point. This is a stair stepping, and the question is, well, why can't he just get off of Suboxone, right, altogether? And I think the answer that the physician gave him was that there is a difference with your brain chemistry going from Suboxone to marijuana. You are going to go through a little bit of withdrawal, and it's the physical process of taking something every day, and now you're not taking that. You're clearing your brain chemicals up a little bit. You're still physically taking marijuana, and then you can slowly kind of step into true sobriety. So in that scenario, I'm going to personally be for using marijuana to get off of a drug if we're comparing two things, right? Suboxone and its side effects, which I'm not an expert on. I don't know all the side effects, but I can tell you right now that if I want him to be using a substance that naturally occurs versus something that's
Chemical
made
made.
Yeah.
and synthetic, I want him to be on something that is from the earth, so to speak. Vitamins, supplements, candy. What I'm just interested, cutting something in half, right? We think of a supplement like a magnesium or like a vitamin C. It's coming in its form, you know, and it's got the milligrams on it. Same thing with a gummy. Do we agree or not agree with cutting something in half? These companies are advertising this.
I mean, I just don't think you can fully trust the production of or the way that's derived to be equally distributed by the dosage in any amount of it, be it magnesium pills or your medication or whatever. Like, my dad's a physician. One thing he always said is never never cut your pills in half because it messes with the time release, messes with the dosage, right?
Interesting.
So I think those are the types of things where, yeah, if any circumstance happens, taking a bite off a gummy, you may get all of it and your partner may get none of it, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's always danger in that for sure.
Steve, microdosing, cutting things in half. What do you think?
I agree with Izzy. We just don't know what's out there. And I think, coming back, I think education, I fall back on education and education in the schools all the way up through where you see, I think we've missed that part of it when it comes to marijuana as a whole. We haven't done a very good job of educating, whether it's marijuana or microdosing or gummies. The education side of it, if you think of going through school and all the things you learned about, we've missed that.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
we need to pick up on that.
Yeah, reaction time, attention,
Yes.
coordination, all that stuff is impacted, and I
Yeah.
think too, not understanding the distribution, right? We've talked before on our marijuana episode about, like, my baking and that I bake cookies and not the type of baking, Steve, that you're used
Yeah.
to, and hot boxing and all your favorite
Yeah.
criminals that you
Brownies. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, no cookie is a perfect cookie,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes the chocolate chips end up more
Right.
on this side of the batch than that side,
Right.
and so that's really what we're talking about, and just having the clarity to understand what that does to our judgment and can do. Because THC distribution is not necessarily always perfectly even. Like, we need to understand that. It shouldn't be a difficult concept, I think, and cutting it in half doesn't necessarily mean it is safe. And so lastly, and maybe more importantly, driving and the enforcement challenge behind this. So Steve, how does law enforcement even handle this when it comes to impaired driving? This is someone who is clearly impaired. They're under the use of marijuana or THC, and you've now pulled them over.
And so it is different than alcohol. So you're looking for different things. The indicators are the same when you're looking for their speech. You're looking for their reactiveness and going through, but we don't have an alcohol per se test for drugs. And so what's becoming more popular across the country is blood draws and phlebotomists. So there are states now where the officers, my former state just enacted phlebotomists. They're training as phlebotomists where officers are actually taking your blood at the roadside or at the station and they're testing for blood. They get a warrant and take your blood and test you for that. Drug recognition experts are out there. So just because you haven't drinking alcohol, the impairment level is still there. Again, we talked about in the past about the two prongs of impairment. One is the alcohol side of it, where the O8 we all count, and the other how is the drug side. The officer feels you're impaired. You go through the same sobriety tests. The officer has the ability to arrest you if you're impaired. He may not know at that time what you're impaired on. He may ask you those questions, but if he feels you're impaired, no matter what it's from, they can arrest you.
Yeah, I think society, that's what we want, right? Is there
Right.
like if I'm in the car with my family on Memorial Day,
Yeah.
driving my children to a soccer event or a football event, and there's a vehicle in front of me with someone who is impaired, I quite frankly don't care what they're impaired on. I want
Right.
Steve to pull them over.
Absolutely. I think that's the key, right? Is that we keep talking about impaired driving is impaired driving, and getting behind the wheel of a vehicle when you're impaired by any substance, be it alcohol, be it drugs, be it prescription drugs. I know that's a big thing now.
Mhm.
It's just not safe, right? And I think those are the things that we just say is just because it's legal doesn't mean it's okay to drive on it. Um, it- but impairment, the law still applies, and legal doesn't mean it's safe to drive. So I think that's the big focus for us is as a company, as us three as individuals believe in is if you're going to partake in any kind of substance that impairs your judgment, your reaction time, don't get behind the wheel.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
don't drive. And because it's my family out there, it's your guys'
Yeah.
family out there, and you making a poor decision as an individual can influence someone's life forever.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why ignition interlock devices work. They keep me safe if I'm the one who has the DUI, and they keep you safe
More importantly,
because
yeah.
it's preventing me from getting behind the wheel of a vehicle if I'm under a substance. So Steve, if I were, um, your daughter, if I were a friend, if I were someone that is important to you and you're talking to them and you're explaining to me how to stay safe, understanding that there is confusion in the market. We maybe not know what Delta 8, Delta 9, but we're seeing this stuff on the shelf. How do I stay safe, and what advice would you give from a trooper perspective?
Don't get behind the wheel of a car or anything that's any kind of motor vehicle if you're going to do that. Have I call it a designated friend, right? It's not only driver, but a designated friend that's going to say, hey, and keep you in line no matter what you're doing. Because there's multiple things that can happen besides impaired driving, right? And not getting all deal to that. If you're impaired, many things can happen to you. And so have that that friend that's there to take your family member, whatever it is. And there's lots of scary things out there. We haven't even touched on some of the things that we heard. You don't know where that actual source of that gummy, if somebody hands you a gummy, you don't know where it came from, right? We've all heard of fentanyl. We know
Yes,
the effects of fentanyl
absolutely.
it can have. And so your friends and family, you want to keep them close and you want to keep them safe. So, watch over your friends and family, especially during these holiday seasons, and don't trust what people tell you or where it came from. Always know the source.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Look after each other. Look after each other.
yeah.
If you or someone you love find yourself in a situation where you are facing a DUI and you need an ignition interlock device due to polyblow, marijuana use, or alcohol, I believe in Smart Start, and the three of us do believe in Smart Start. We are the judgment-free company for any of your ignition interlock or car breathalyzer needs. You can also visit our website at www.smartstartinc.com and get your first 2 payments free with coupon code STIGMAFREE.
Or call us at 844-766-0156 so we can get you some free advice on your DUI journey.
Thank you again for joining the show. I'm Morgan Ryan.
And I'm Izzy Varela.
Until next time, stay
Stay safe,
safe,
drive
drive
smart.
smart.